Breaking news tonight, the coronavirus outbreak declared a global pandemic.
Could possibly be the mark of the beast.
Today, the World Health Organization officially calling it a pandemic.
Francis asking people to come together tonight as the world faces...
I'm issuing a stay-at-home order effective Thursday at 12:00.
Tracing people using a smartphone.
Bottom line, it's going to get worse.
Keep an eye on neighbours and dob them in for breaking COVID rules.
Masks and face coverings will be mandatory.
Permanently shut down his personal account.
A race for a COVID vaccine.
Seal off the Victorian state.
Close places of worship is actually
mandatory quarantine.
Unemployment nationwide.
Executive orders to
Francis asking people to come together tonight.
It's a great pizza.
Titled Restoring the Common Good.
Antifa is an idea, not an organization.
Oh, you got it.
Not militia.
The time to act is now.
The coronavirus, and more importantly, the events, laws, and policies that have transpired as a result of the pandemic have been catapulting the world closer to the enforcement of the mark of the beast. The truth about this prophecy that means so much to the people of God in these last days has, through the ages, been obscured and concealed by the ideas, traditions, and interpretations of men. And like the darkness that falls upon the forest at night, leaves the true seeker of truth lost, blinded, and unable to make their way through the final events of Earth's history. But the God who is not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance, has given us His word, and Thy word is a lamp unto our feet and a light unto our path. The beauty of the mark of the beast prophecy has been buried under the rubble of myth and mystery. But I guarantee you, in this video I will deal with none of these speculations and will show conclusively and precisely what the mark of the beast is, and how the Bible itself reveals its own prophecies. We will also trace the coronavirus pandemic that has been such a colossal catalyst in readying the world for the last great controversy between Christ and Satan, which will be a revelation of character. It is in a crisis that character is revealed, and with the mark of the beast crisis, the characters of all will be made manifest. Those who have a selfish character will make it manifest in their endeavor to save themselves at the expense of others, and those who have by God's grace developed a Christ-like character of self-sacrificing love will make it manifest in their endeavor to save others at the sacrifice of their own lives. This controversy is not only about the revelation of the future, but about the revelation of Satan in his people and the revelation of Christ in His people. It is a polarizing of the world so that all may plainly see the result of choosing Christ or rejecting Him. And with the choices so clearly demonstrated before them, all may make informed decisions for eternity. And this is the purpose of the mark of the beast crisis, and it will, like the light of dawn, make manifest what has been hidden in the hearts of men all along.
Growing number of confrontations over wearing masks in this country. Tonight,
a fight over face masks.
And seconds later, goes after a customer.
Fight broke out. The airline saying argued with the flight attendant over wearing a face mask.
As the looting continues, and this is looting taking place around the city.
counters are knocked over.
In the book of Revelation, in the 13th chapter, we read of a global power called the Beast. And we read in the prophecy that all the world wondered after the Beast. Furthermore, we read that this is a persecuting power, for it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. It is from prophecies like this that many, rightly so, point to the things happening in the world today as harbingers of these ancient prophecies nearing their fulfillment. In the words of the former Prime Minister Gordon Brown regarding coronavirus, he said this is not something that can be dealt with in one country. There has to be a coordinated global response. Of course, if you have a global problem, you need to have a global solution. Then there is seemingly cause for the implementation of global government. David Rockefeller said in 1994, "We are on the verge of a global transformation. All we need is the right major crisis and the nations will accept the new world order."
Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Whether that global crisis is an alien threat, climate change, or a global pandemic, it matters not. The solution being urged is the same: global government. It's articles like this, where Gordon Brown calls for global government to tackle coronavirus, why many are connecting the dots themselves and realizing the zeal of politicians, bankers, and people of power to implement global regulations and seize more power over the population is leading in the direction Bible prophecy said that it would. Speaking of this beast power, the prophecy records all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him. When it says the earth shall worship him, the central and underlying principle of worship is obedience, meaning all that dwell upon the earth shall obey him. We see this definition of worship employed in the Bible as well. Paul writes in Romans chapter 6, "Know ye not that to whom ye yield yourselves servants to obey, his servants ye are to whom ye obey, whether of sin unto death or of obedience unto righteousness." And in the book of 1 Samuel chapter 15 and verse 22, we read, "To obey is better than sacrifice, and to hearken than the fat of rams." Therefore, worship and obedience are one and the same. And this universal obedience is made possible by the enforcement of the mark of the beast. For the prophecy says, "No man might buy or sell save he that had the mark." By controlling the ability to buy and sell, the mark of the beast crisis will force all into one of two groups: those who obey the beast and those who don't. But the exercise of force is contrary to the principles of God's government. He desires only the service of love. And love cannot be commanded, it cannot be won by force or authority. Only by love is love awakened. Those who know Jesus' tender voice and compassionate love will discern that this compulsory obedience to the beast is the working of another spirit. The coronavirus pandemic has changed the world more in the last year than any amount of promotion or lobbying or policy changes could have done in a century. There is an old saying, you never want to let a good crisis go to waste.
You never want a serious crisis to go to waste. And what I mean by that, it's an opportunity to do things that you think you could not do before.
The COVID pandemic has been used as an excuse to undermine basic human and constitutional rights, and has in many instances bankrupted businesses, put families on the streets, and left those who still had their homes practically under house arrest.
Complete lockdown, effective immediately.
They are banned from leaving their homes.
Why have several politicians and experts said that we must learn to live with the virus now?
And any thought of a return to normal in the short term is totally unrealistic.
As the Washington Post noted, executive orders were coming fast and furious from governors' mansions around the nation.
Issuing 2 executive orders.
Executive order.
Do an executive order today.
Another executive order.
Signing an executive order.
Issuing a safer at home order.
Today I signed an executive order.
Getting executive orders on the governor's desk.
The rapid and sweeping unchecked legal changes on the backdrop of a global mass media fear campaign created a planet of 7 billion mask-wearing, social distancing hypochondriacs overnight that are so afraid of each other that they won't even see family, give loved ones a hug, shake hands, or go to work.
Alarming news tonight about the coronavirus, devastating at every level.
It is no secret that a fearful population is easier to control, and this is because when a person or a population is in a state of fear, they are more likely to react instinctively than to think critically or reasonably. And when this state of fear gives sway to a mindset that seeks protection and safety at all costs, it will surely come at a very high cost, the cost of freedom. Benjamin Franklin said, "Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety." A population that will give up freedoms in exchange for perceived safety will surely lose both.
Ben Franklin in his time could afford to be absolutist about not trading any liberty for safety, because in 1755, the worst weapon an enemy could bring against you was a cannon or a musket.
But some freedoms are going to have to be given up to make sure that unstable people don't have access to those weapons.
Lockdown restrictions are meant to protect the public, but they also, of course, limit personal freedoms and damage.
They can be an excuse to adopt repressive measures. And the COVID-19 emergency is fast becoming a human rights crisis.
We are led to believe these sweeping legal changes are for our good and to keep us safe. Even wrapped up with this idea is the new virtue that by obeying these laws, we are selflessly protecting our fellow man.
I care for you.
One of the most effectual deceptions to overthrow a nation is to outwardly seek its stability and promotion while secretly bending every effort to secure its overthrow. And this is how Lucifer was so successful in heaven. He is called in Ezekiel the covering cherub, and the word cover means to protect or defend, as his position was to cover the Ark of the Covenant, protecting and defending the covenant of the 10 Commandments within it. But this mighty angel rebelled against God, not by seeking to overthrow him, but by pretending to be like him. For we are told his intent was to be like the Most High. Lucifer was outwardly pretending to promote the stability of the government of God while secretly bending every effort to secure its overthrow. And this is the same method employed by the Antichrist at the end of time. He does not outwardly profess to be against Christ, but rather will profess to occupy his place. As we are told, he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. And now Lucifer is employing these same methods amidst this pandemic. And when you understand what the mark of the beast is, you will be shocked to see how the enemy of souls has been using coronavirus to lay the groundwork for the enforcement of the mark of the beast. But before we see and appreciate this more fully, we first need to start by unmasking the mark. The mark of the beast is exactly what it sounds like. It is the mark or sign of the beast power. Perhaps the most common error concerning the mark of the beast is trying to identify the mark without first identifying the beast, and any such effort will surely result in error. We must first identify the beast, for this is a prerequisite before enabling one to correctly identify its mark. God warned us about not receiving the mark. But would he warn us against something that will cost us our eternal salvation and then not tell us what it is? The Bible says God is long-suffering to usward, not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. Since Jesus has revealed to his servant John the things which must shortly come to pass, it stands to reason Jesus wants us to know what these things mean so that we should not perish, but come to repentance, and therefore he must have provided the keys with which to unlock these prophecies. And he did, because he loves you. When understanding the symbols in the Bible, we have to first understand that they are symbols. Especially do we read this about the book of Revelation in the first chapter and in the first verse. The revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave unto him to show unto his servants things which must shortly come to pass, and he sent and signified it by his angel unto his servant John. When John says the book was signified, this means it was given in signs and symbols. And regarding the interpretation of prophetic symbols, we read in 2 Peter 1:20, knowing this first, that no prophecy of the Scriptures is of any private interpretation. So the first thing God wants us to know about prophecy is that none of the Bible's prophecies are of any private interpretation. The Greek word for private is the word idios, which means pertaining to self or one's own. that is one's own opinion, teaching us that no prophecy of the scriptures is to be one's own interpretation. In other words, you are not to speculate what these symbols mean. When we remove human conjecture from the equation and allow the Bible itself to interpret its own symbols, only then can we have confidence in coming to a correct interpretation, since the definitions for the symbols are coming from the one who gave the symbols. So now let's look at identifying the beast power. Here are 24 characteristics the Bible gives to help identify the Antichrist power. With this much detail, there's no need for guesswork. But let's take a look at just 8. And to make things more interesting, I'm not going to tell you who it is right away. You are going to tell me. I will only point out to you what the Bible says, and you will tell me who the Antichrist is. Are you ready? Then let's begin. First, in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, we read of the Antichrist power, here called the son of perdition, in these words, "Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God." In these verses, we see the Antichrist power exalteth himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, and consequently, he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Quite simply, the Antichrist will profess to be a God on the earth. Secondly, the Antichrist will claim he can forgive sins. Regarding this Antichrist beast in Revelation 13, we read, "And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, and his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven." Here I want to focus on the element of blasphemies. The Antichrist has a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies. And allowing the Bible to define the meaning in its own words, let's look at John chapter 10 and verse 33 to define blasphemy. The Bible says, "The Jews answered him, saying, For a good work we stone thee not, but for blasphemy, and because thou, being a man, makest thyself God." So blasphemy is for a man to make himself out to be God. And is not this exactly what we saw in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2? That the Antichrist would sit in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God? This is blasphemy, and further underscores that the Antichrist will claim to be God. But there is another definition for blasphemy. In Mark chapter 2 and verse 7, we read, "Why doth this man thus speak blasphemies? Who can forgive sins but God only?" In this verse, blasphemy is defined as the ability to forgive sin. The forgiveness of sin is alone the prerogative of God. So then, when the Antichrist claims the ability to forgive sin, it is blasphemy. So then, this Antichrist beast in Revelation 13 that has a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, we may know that he will claim to be God and claim the prerogatives of God, such as the ability to forgive sin. The location of the seat of the Antichrist is also revealed. In the beginning of Revelation chapter 13, John says, "And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy." This blasphemous beast is described as having 7 heads, and once again using the Bible to define its own symbols, as to avoid all human speculation. We may observe that the Bible defines this symbol for us 4 chapters later in Revelation chapter 17 and verse 9. "And here's the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth." Simply put, the Bible teaches that the symbol of these 7 heads are to be understood to refer to 7 mountains. showing us this Antichrist power will sit or reside in an area of 7 mountains or 7 hills. The Bible also reveals that the Antichrist will be a church and state power. In Revelation chapter 17, verse 3, the Bible says, "So he carried me away in the Spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns." Now, this woman that is sitting on a beast with 7 heads and 10 horns is the same beast we just saw in the beginning of chapter 13, as we read of that beast that it also was seen having 7 heads and 10 horns. So let's allow the Bible to define its own symbols for the beast and this woman. Concerning the definition for a beast, we read in Daniel chapter 7 and verse 23, "The 4th beast shall be the 4th kingdom upon earth." So here we see that a beast is a symbol for a kingdom or a nation. Now, with regard to the woman, we read in Jeremiah 6:2, "I have likened the daughter of Zion to a comely and delicate woman." So God had chosen to liken or symbolically represent the daughter of Zion as a woman. Who is Zion? God said through Isaiah, "Say unto Zion, thou art my people." Since, in a prophetic sense, the Bible employs a woman as a symbol of Zion, and Zion represents God's people, we can conclude that in the prophecies of the Bible, a woman represents God's people, which are those that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. But this woman is not just any woman, she is specifically a virgin woman. We see this in 2 Corinthians 11:2. "For I am jealous over you with godly jealousy, for I have espoused you to one husband, that I may present you as a chaste virgin to Christ." Therefore, in the Bible, a woman in a spiritual or prophetic sense is a symbol to represent the church, God's people, who keep His commandments and have the faith of Jesus. But the woman riding the beast is not a virgin. She is a harlot, and we see this in the 1st chapter of Revelation 17, that this woman is the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. So far from being a chaste virgin, this woman is a whore, meaning it is an apostate church, one that does not keep God's commandments. So in this symbol of the woman riding the beast, we have a depiction of a church controlling a kingdom, more specifically an apostate church in control of a civil kingdom, or a church and state power. This is further substantiated by the fact this apostate church commits fornication with the kings of the earth, as John speaks of her, saying she is the woman with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So this symbol of the woman riding the beast in Revelation 13 represents the Antichrist power, a union of an apostate church and state power. Now, regarding this woman that represents an apostate church that resides on 7 hills, John adds in chapter 17 and verse 4, "And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color." Therefore, quite simply put, the Bible is telling us this apostate church will adorn or clothe itself in purple and scarlet colors. Are you aware of any church that adorns itself in purple and scarlet colors? But perhaps more importantly, this Antichrist power will attempt to change God's law. This same beast power represented in Daniel chapter 7 as a little horn, of whom we read, "And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. And they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of time." So Daniel tells us the little horn shall speak great words against the Most High, as does the beast that speaks great things in Revelation 13:5. But in addition to this, the Bible here reveals the Antichrist power will think to change times and laws. And these are not the laws of men merely, for men add and change laws all the time. Here, the Antichrist will think to change the times and laws of God. In no other blasphemous way could the Antichrist claim the prerogatives of God than by claiming to change a law that God Himself had instituted and written with His own divine hand. God says concerning His laws, "My covenant will I not break, nor alter the thing that has gone out of my lips." What is the covenant that He promised not to alter? In Deuteronomy chapter 4 and verse 13, the Bible says, "And He declared unto you His covenant, which He commanded you to perform, even 10 commandments, and wrote them upon 2 tables of stone. The covenant is the 10 commandments, and God promised, "My covenant will I not break, nor alter the thing that has gone out of my lips." If anyone presumes to tell you that God has ever changed his law, we may know that that is a doctrine of devils and the spirit of Antichrist, who will think to change times and laws. The next characteristic of the Antichrist is one that pertains to time. When we go back to Revelation 13 and look at the Antichrist beast power, we saw the Bible foretold, "And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. Power was given to the Antichrist for a period of 42 months. What was the power given to the Antichrist to do? In verse 7 we see, "And it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations." This period of the Antichrist's reign and power to make war with the saints and to overcome them and persecute them would last 42 months. This is the same time period mentioned in Daniel chapter 7 concerning the little horn. "And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws." And now notice, Daniel says the little horn power shall wear out the saints of the Most High. This is the same idea. The little horn will persecute the saints and overcome them. Then Daniel writes how long this reign of persecution against Christians will last, and says, "And they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of time." In the Jewish tradition, a time is referred to as a year, or a complete cycle of the seasons. If a time is a year, and times is 2 years, and the dividing of time is a half a year, that means this period of 3.5 years, which in months would be 42 months exactly. Now, if we take 42 months and divide it into days, with each biblical month being a period of 30 days, then a period of 42 months would be equivalent of 1,260 days. And with that in mind, let's consider Revelation 12:6. "And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she hath a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days." So let's put this together. The Antichrist, represented in Daniel as the little horn and in the book of Revelation as the first beast in chapter 13, both have power to persecute the saints for 1,260 days, or 42 months, or 3.5 years, which are all the same amount of time, just in different measurements. And in this verse, the virgin woman dressed in white, which we saw represents God's people, is depicted as fleeing into the wilderness for 1,260 days. Why? Because the Antichrist power has been given power to persecute them during this time. Now, let's take this a step further and look at this time period. When calculating Bible prophecy, there are symbolic measurements of time that are to be interpreted into real measurements of time. And what I mean is, for example, 1 day in prophetic time is the equivalent to 1 year in real time. Now, this is not my own opinion. Let's look once again to the Bible. In Numbers chapter 14, the Bible says, "After the number of the days in which ye search the land, even 40 days, each day for a year, shall ye bear your iniquities, even 40 years, and ye shall know my breach of promise." In this verse, each day was to be a symbol for 1 literal year. And we see this also in Ezekiel chapter 4. "For I have laid upon thee the years of their iniquity, according to the number of the days, 390 days. So shalt thou bear the iniquity of the house of Israel. And when thou hast accomplished them, lie again on thy right side, and thou shalt bear the iniquity of the house of Judah 40 days. I have appointed thee each day for a year." When we take the 40 days for the iniquity of Judah and add it to the 390 days for the iniquity of the house of Israel, we get a combined number of 430 prophetic days. Once translated into real time, this would mean they were to bear their iniquities 430 years. And this was exactly how long God's people were held captive in Egypt. "And it came to pass at the end of 430 years, even the selfsame day it came to pass, that all the hosts of the Lord went out from the land of Egypt." So here is one real biblical example showing us the method of calculating prophetic time, showing us that in the Bible, and according to the Bible's own use of prophetic time, That one day in prophecy is to be interpreted as each day for a year. Now, taking this principle and applying it to the 1,260-day reign of the Antichrist power, we now understand that we should rightly be looking for the Antichrist to reign and persecute and make war with the saints and overcome them for a period of 1,260 years. Finally, there is one last characteristic of Antichrist that I want to look at, and that is the prophecy showing that the Antichrist power was and is not, and yet is. In Revelation 13, we see in verse 8, "The beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was and is not, and yet is." So the Antichrist will exist for a period of time and have power to persecute the saints. We saw that this refers to the 1,260-year period. And after this 1,260-year period, the Antichrist will lose its power for a time, but then it will come back. And when it does, John writes, it will go into perdition, and they that dwell on the earth shall wonder. So let's now put all this together. I have shown you from the Bible how the Bible defines every symbol and how the Bible instructs us to calculate symbolic time, and have given examples. So having just examined these 8 characteristics, we have determined conclusively that the Antichrist power will speak great blasphemies by claiming to be God and by claiming the ability to forgive sins. It will reside in an area of 7 mountains or hills. It is a union of both a church and state power. It will be adorned or clothed in purple and scarlet. It will claim that God's law has been changed. It will have power to persecute Christians or God's people for 1,260 years. And after this reign of persecution, it will cease to have power for a period, and then will come back to power and lead the world into perdition or destruction. Now, if you think you know who the Antichrist is, I want to remind you that I have not told you who it is. You came to that conclusion on your own. All I've done so far is have just explained the meaning of the symbols according to the Bible's own definitions. So if you have chosen an entity that you believe fits all these characteristics, it is because the Bible has revealed this to you and not me. And as you can see, when you allow the Bible to define its own symbols, then these prophecies truly do become a revelation. If you're still not quite sure who all these prophecies might apply to, that's okay. There are 24 characteristics the Bible gives us by which we can identify the Antichrist. But allow me to quote the most well-known Protestant reformers, as they all agreed who the Antichrist was and have wrote their conclusions in no uncertain terms. Martin Luther, perhaps the most well-known of all Protestant reformers, for nailing his 95 Theses to the door of the Wittenberg Church, wrote in 1520, "We here are of the conviction that the papacy is the seat of the true and real Antichrist. Personally, I declare that I owe the Pope no other obedience than that to Antichrist." He also wrote, "I rejoice in having to bear such ills for the best of causes. Already I feel greater liberty in my heart, for at last I know that the Pope is Antichrist, and that his throne is that of Satan himself." John Wesley, the great Methodist reformer, said of the papacy, "He is in an emphatical sense the man of sin, as he increases all manner of sin above measure. And he is, too, properly styled the son of perdition, as he has caused the death of numberless multitudes, both of his opposers and followers. He it is that exalteth himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, claiming the highest power and highest honor, claiming the prerogatives which belong to God alone." The well-known Presbyterian John Calvin wrote, "Some persons think us too severe and censorious when we call the Roman pontiff Antichrist. But those who are of this opinion do not consider that they bring the same charge of presumption against Paul himself, after whom we speak and whose language we adopt. I shall briefly show that Paul's words are not capable of any other interpretation than that which applies them to the papacy. Charles Spurgeon wrote, "It is the bounden duty of every Christian to pray against Antichrist, and as to what Antichrist is, no sane man ought to raise a question. If it be not the Popery in the Church of Rome, there is nothing in the world that can be called by that name." So then, does the papacy fulfill the characteristics we examined earlier? Does the Pope make such a blasphemous claim as to be God? The Catholic publication Catholic National published in July of 1895 the statement that the Pope is not only the representative of Jesus Christ, he is Jesus Christ himself, hidden under the veil of flesh. In 1884, Pope Leo said, "We hold upon this earth the place of God Almighty." In the papal bull, Unum Sanctum, Pope Boniface VIII said, "The Roman Pontiff judges all men, but is judged by no one. We declare, assert, define, and pronounce to be subject to the Roman Pontiff is to every human creature necessary for salvation. That which was spoken of Christ, thou hast subdued all things under his feet, may well seem verified in me. I have the authority of the King of Kings. I am all in all and above all, so that God himself and I, the Vicar of God, have but one consistory, and I am able to do all that God can do." A Catholic priest wrote, "The power of the priest is the power of the divine person, for the transubstantiation of the bread requires as much power as the creation of the world. Thus, the priest may be called the creator of the creator." And still another priest said, speaking of the Pope, "For thou art the shepherd, thou art the physician, thou art the director, thou art the husbandman. Finally, thou art another God on earth." Now, does the papacy claim the ability to forgive sins? In the Catholic Encyclopedia, Volume 12, in an article entitled Pope, on page 265, we see the statement, "This judicial authority will even include the power to forgive sin. The poor sinner kneels at his confessor's feet. He knows he is not speaking to an ordinary man, but to another Christ. He hears the words, 'I absolve thy sins,' and the hideous load of sins drop from his soul forever."
The penitent is speaking not to the priest. The penitent is speaking to God himself. And the priest acts there simply as the intermediary.
So the papacy does indeed claim the prerogatives of God, which is blasphemy, and does indeed claim to absolve and forgive sins. So now, what about residing on the 7 mountains or hills? Remember, John saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and the 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. The Catholic Encyclopedia says on page 529, it is within the city of Rome, called the City on 7 Hills, that the entire area of Vatican State proper is now confined. So let's look at our next point. Is the Catholic Church both a church and state power? In addition to his service in this spiritual role, the Pope is also head of state of the independent sovereign state of the Vatican City, a city-state and nation entirely enclaved by the city of Rome. As the head of the Roman Catholic Church, an ecclesiastical or religious church, he is also the head of the Vatican City-State, which is its own nation within Rome, making the papacy both a church and state power. And the prophecy said, "And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication." Here is an official Vatican coin from 1963 depicting the Roman Catholic Church as a woman holding a golden cup in her hand. And the bishops and cardinals of the Catholic Church adorn themselves in purple and scarlet colors, just as the prophecy had foretold. This cover from U.S. News and World Report magazine really sums it up, showing the Catholic priests in their purple robes worshiping idols with a golden cup in their hand. Now, the most significant point when it comes to identifying the Antichrist is that concerning the changing times and laws of God, especially the one commandment that is related to time, the Sabbath commandment. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. God assigned the law concerning this day of rest to the seventh day, which is known as Saturday. In the Catholic publication, The Catholic Mirror, the Church stated in 1983, the Catholic Church, declared Cardinal Gibbons, by virtue of her divine mission, changed the day from Saturday to Sunday. In the Convert's Catechism of Catholic Doctrine, the Catholic Church states, we observe Sunday instead of Saturday because the Catholic Church in the Council of Laodicea, AD 364, transferred the solemnity from Saturday to Sunday. One Catholic priest wrote of the Sabbath, saying the Bible says, remember that thou keep holy the Sabbath day. The Catholic Church says no. By my divine power, I abolish the Sabbath day and command you to keep the first day of the week. And lo, the entire civilized world bows down in reverent obedience to the command of the Holy Catholic Church. So the question is not, did the Church think to change the Sabbath day? Because clearly they did. The question is whether or not they had the God-given prerogative to change the Ten Commandments, which God promised He would never alter. So how you answer this question will determine which day of the week you recognize as the Sabbath. And this is why another minister wrote, it was the Catholic Church which transferred this rest to the Sunday. Thus, the observance of Sunday by Protestants is an homage they pay in spite of themselves to the authority of the Church. Now let's look at the next point. Did the Roman Catholic Church have power to make war with, persecute, and overcome the saints for 1,260 years? The papacy's power became supreme in Christendom in 538 AD due to a letter of the Roman Emperor Justinian, known as Justinian's Decree, which set up and acknowledged the Bishop of Rome as the head of all churches. It gave the papacy political power, civil power, as well as ecclesiastical power. This letter became part of Justinian's Code, the fundamental law of the empire, and the year Pope Vigilius ascended the throne under the military protection of Belisarius. In 538 AD, the Church of Rome emerged as the head of both the church and the civil territories that made up the fallen Roman Empire, and continued to rule and have power to make war with the saints for 1,260 years. And this period is known as the Dark Ages, and the civil reign of the papal power ended in 1798. In 1798, General Berthier made his entrance into Rome, abolished the papal government, and established a secular one. This was the fulfillment of the Antichrist's reign over the saints of God for 1,260 years. Then from 1798 to 1929, the papal power ceased to have any civil power or presence. Then, in 1929, the Roman Catholic Church re-emerged. The San Francisco Chronicle on February 11, 1929, wrote, "The Roman question tonight is a thing of the past, and the Vatican was at peace with Italy. In affixing the autographs to the memorable document, healing the wound of many years, extreme cordiality was displayed on both sides." The New York Times reported from 11 o'clock this morning there was another sovereign independent state in the world. At that time, Premier Mussolini, as Italian foreign minister representing King Victor Emmanuel, the first Italian premier ever to cross the threshold of the Vatican, exchanged with Cardinal Gasperi, papal secretary of state representing Pope Pius XI, ratifications of the treaties signed at the Lateran Palace on February 11. By that simple act, the sovereign independent state of Vatican City came into existence. And with this, the last characteristic of the Antichrist is fulfilled, that the Antichrist would be a church and state power that was, is not, and yet is. It was, or existed from 538 to 1798, having both civil and religious authority. And then it was not from 1798 to 1929. and after 1929, it yet is. And it is in the yet is stage of its existence after 1929 that it was foretold, "It shall ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into perdition, and they that dwell on the earth shall wonder." And in fulfillment of this prophecy and the 8 characteristics that we have looked at, the world today is indeed wondering or admiring and following after the Pope of the Roman Catholic Church, the Antichrist.
Buonasera.
The pontiff is not only the head of state, but is also head of the government of the Catholic Church, known as the Holy See. This institution has existed for the best part of 2 millennia.
He's captured the imagination not just of the world's 1.2 billion Catholics, but the world itself.
I get it on the streets. I mean, everybody from the bartender to the cab driver telling me, Cardinal Dolan, we love this guy.
His Twitter account, @Pontifex, ranks in the top 5 most searched words on the internet. He walks the streets, poses for pictures, embraces the sick, and is not afraid to have a bit of fun.
Eric Schmidt, CEO of Google. Donald Trump, President of the United States. Vladimir Putin, President of Russia. Leonardo DiCaprio, Hollywood movie star. Christine Lagarde, Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund. Elizabeth II, Queen of England.
Pope Francis has just endorsed same-sex unions for the very first time.
And the leading gay magazine, The Advocate, have named him their Person of the Year.
Even amid the coronavirus pandemic, the head of the Antichrist power is weighing in on the matter, and what he is saying actually has a lot to do with the mark of the beast. On April 8th, the New York Post reported the Pope says coronavirus could be nature's response to climate change. He likened the outbreak of the virus to natural disasters such as fires and floods and concluded, saying, "I believe we have to slow down our rate of production and consumption and to learn to understand and contemplate the natural world." The climate has been at the top of the Pope's agenda for several years, and for good reason. And that reason is selling the world on the enforcement of the mark of the beast for the good of the planet. We all know from the plainest reading of the prophecies concerning the mark of the beast that its enforcement requires an ability to control to a large degree the entire population of Earth, in particular the economy as it pertains to buying and selling.
Seen extra COVID restrictions come into force today.
Call centres who try to track down people who test positive and their close contacts.
Coronavirus is changing our world and the way it works, ushering us into the age of global population control through surveillance, facial recognition technologies, checkpoints, and border checks to limit travel, and of course, more control over the economy.
The International Monetary Fund is reportedly lobbying to use individuals' online web histories to set your credit score.
Washington State recently okayed a new facial recognition law, and it's even being seen as a national model. It's said it won't be used for tracking innocent people, but who is innocent and who gets to decide?
And they'll say, well, we're targeting certain individuals, but the nature of the technology is so expansive that you cannot use this without countless innocent people having their data captured as well.
Clearly, the Vatican likes the idea of facial recognition technology being used. As Reuters reported, Vatican joins IBM, Microsoft to call for facial recognition regulation. In today's age, you are guilty until proven innocent.
State contact tracers are working around the clock to notify and isolate positive cases.
Nations try to track and trace their way out of the corona crisis. Privacy concerns remain, with the citizens' every move being monitored.
Well, not everyone is keen on installing a tracing app on their phone. But in countries such as India, there's little choice. People there must download a state-backed tracing app if they want to travel.
And as the technology is implemented and deployed, no doubt laws will change and policies will change until your movements are tracked and reported, so that when you become guilty because you miss a car payment or won't get inoculated with the latest vaccine, you will be arrested soon after your face shows up in public. The president of the Philippines, Rodrigo Duterte, announced during the crisis that those who violate coronavirus lockdown will be shot dead.
Shoot them dead.
He told Reuters, "My orders to the police and military, if there is trouble and there's an occasion that they fight back and your lives are in danger, shoot them dead." In India and other places, authorities take to rods and instruments with which to beat offenders of lockdown orders and destroy their bikes or property when they're not supposed to be in public. Those exiting worship services were beaten by the police as they exited the building. Others are forced to do push-ups or demeaning and ridiculous acts or exercises, even being held in dog cages for violating curfew. Migrant workers have been gathered together and hosed down with disinfectant. Bill Gates, one of the staunchest proponents of vaccines, believes we need digital certificates to prove who has received the coronavirus vaccine. And if you don't get the vaccine, you don't work. He added, "This technology will only be used for safety and convenience," he says, and the technology is nothing more than an upgrade on traditional cattle branding.
And you won't qualify for the childcare payments. So this is essentially a no jab, no pay policy from this government.
No jab, no job, with some businesses considering making the COVID-19 vaccine mandatory for employees.
Even the World Health Organization said family members may have to be removed from their homes.
In response to the spread of this virus, authorities may have to enter people's homes and remove family members, presumably by force.
In some senses, transmission has been taken off the streets and pushed back into family units. Now we need to go and look in families to find those people who may be sick and remove them and isolate them in a safe and dignified manner.
A pregnant woman has been charged with incitement after police raided her Ballarat home.
You're under arrest in relation to incitement.
After allegedly encouraging friends to attend a lockdown protest.
Mr. Jones, come down the stairs, now!
And when one couple refused to sign an order that they would quarantine at home, officials forced the issue with ankle bracelets.
Anybody were to see this, they think we're criminals.
Is this the kind of world we want to live in? This is just a very small sampling of what is going to come in the future, and even what's going on right now. And as we see these extreme measures to control the global population being implemented, it ought to be a very clear warning to us all of what is to come, and the measures that will be employed to enforce the mark of the beast. And now that we know who the beast is, let's now look at its mark, as accepting or rejecting the mark will be a salvational issue. Those who receive it will receive the 7 last plagues, and in the 19th chapter of Revelation we read, "Those who had received the mark of the beast will be cast alive into a lake of fire burning with brimstone." This is a very serious matter, and being deceived on this subject is a matter of eternal life and death. So let's consider this subject very carefully and prayerfully.
Everybody is wondering and believing, right? Yeah. Believing that the vaccine is the mark of the beast.
Some wonder if this COVID-19 vaccination program that is coming could possibly be the mark of the beast.
Could this lead to the mark of the beast?
Well, I've been looking at some fragments of the book of Revelation.
The book of Revelation.
That's right.
The book of the end of days.
It gets more and more conversation coming out of the Bible, and that's the mark of the beast.
It's the mark of the beast.
I want to speak to you about the mark of the beast.
Are computer microchips the mark of the beast?
Introducing Amazon One, a free service that lets you use your palm to quickly pay for things.
Body scanning like this is another step toward mark of the beast.
And talking about what the scripture calls
the mark of the beast.
When I first started studying the mark of the beast, it was plain to me that irregardless of what the mark was, it was considered to be a sign of allegiance to the beast, since all are forced to receive this mark in their hand or their forehead, and if they don't, they cannot buy or sell. But I knew that there was more to it. The question for me was, what is that sign? What act of designation is it that gives allegiance to the beast? And why is it so heinous that those who receive it will be sentenced to the lake of fire with the devil and his angels? Shortly after I became a Christian, I was intensely interested in the mark of the beast and went about trying to decode the prophecy without even understanding who the beast was. It was frustrating because people would throw out guesses or speculation, but I wanted something tangible, something that was straight from the Bible. I was open to all views and considered them, but all novels, movies, pastors, and theologians just made guesswork of the prophecy that only made it more mysterious rather than more clear. So here is one thought that got me thinking in an entirely new direction, and that really helped me find the answer that I was searching for. And that was this: if the mark of the beast is the sign of allegiance to the beast, then perhaps there was a mark or sign of allegiance to God that would designate those who worship and pay homage to him. And there was, and it's called the seal of God. The Apostle John wrote about his vision of those who had the seal, saying, "And I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God, and he cried with a loud voice to the four angels, to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, saying, Hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads." So those who receive this seal belong to God, and receiving this seal protects them from the outpouring of the 7 last plagues to come upon the earth. And that is why the angels were commanded, "Hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads." Like the word mark, a seal is also a sign or symbol of something. Paul wrote in Romans, "And he received the sign of circumcision, a seal of the righteousness of the faith which he had, yet being uncircumcised." The word sign and seal are both used here interchangeably to describe the same thing. So the seal of God is just as much a sign of God and a sign of those who belong to him. So then, what is the seal or sign of those who belong to God? Once again, we will allow God himself to tell us what his sign is, so there is no guesswork, no speculation, and we can be 100% confident that we are not mistaken. In Exodus 31:13, God spoke, saying, "Verily my Sabbaths ye shall keep, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that ye may know that I am the Lord that doth sanctify you." Clearly, God said the Sabbath was a sign between God and his people, that he was the God that sanctifies them. In Ezekiel 20:20, God says again, "And hallow my Sabbaths, and they shall be a sign between me and you, that ye may know that I am the Lord your God." In this statement, the Sabbath is also declared to be a sign between God and his people, but this time it is said to be a sign whereby his people are to recognize that he specifically is their God. The Sabbath is also a memorial of the fact that God created the earth. In the commandment itself, God gives a reason for this command of rest and says, "For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the 7th day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it." Therefore, since the words sign and seal have the same meaning, and because the Sabbath was given to be a sign between God and his people, that they might know that he is their God, we can see that the 7th-day Sabbath is the seal of God, a sign of designation that, when obeyed, shows that we worship, obey, and belong to the one who created the heavens and the earth. The commandment itself also contains all the elements of a seal. It contains the name of the one in authority, here referring to the Lord. It contains his title or office of authority, referring to him as the Creator, the one who made. And then we find the third element of a seal, the dominion over which the Creator is claiming authority, which is the heaven and the earth and the sea. The Sabbath therefore contains all the elements of a seal, showing that the Sabbath commandment is the seal of God, making the observance of the 7th-day Sabbath an outward sign that we recognize the authority of the one who made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is. The Sabbath is the fourth commandment of the 10 Commandments, and when I read these next verses considering the 10 Commandments of God's law, it really got me thinking about the mark of the beast, and for good reason. In Exodus 13:9, the Lord said, "It shall be for a sign unto thee upon thine hand, and for a memorial between thine eyes, that the Lord's law may be in thy mouth." Again in Deuteronomy, he says concerning his commandments, "And thou shalt bind them for a sign upon thine hand, and they shall be as frontlets between thine eyes." Does that language sound familiar? It should, because in the book of Revelation we read concerning the mark of the beast, that if any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God. The mark of the beast is placed in the hand or upon the forehead, between the eyes, the exact same place that God said to keep his commandments. The hand and forehead, when used in prophecy, have symbolic meaning. The hand represents one's actions. In Deuteronomy chapter 30 and verse 9, the Bible says, "And the Lord thy God will make thee plenteous in every work of thine hand. But now, O Lord, thou art our Father, we are the clay, and thou our potter, and we all are the work of thy hand. And whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do it with thy might." In these verses, the hand is used synonymously with work. The forehead likewise is also a symbol, and the forehead represents one's thoughts, mind, or understanding. Paul wrote in Romans, "So then with the mind, I myself serve the law of God, but with the flesh, the law of sin." So then, with regard to the mark of the beast, whether one receives it or not comes down to the question of obedience. Do they obey God's law in their thoughts and mind, meaning in their forehead, and do they obey God's law in their actions and works, meaning in their hand? Obviously, obedience to the Lord's commandments means receiving the seal of God, and obeying the Antichrist's laws, who claims to have changed the law of God, particularly the Sabbath commandment, by transferring it to Sunday, is to receive the mark or sign of allegiance to the beast. In short, whosoever shall trample upon God's law to obey a human enactment receives the mark of the beast. He accepts the sign of allegiance to the power which he chooses to obey instead of God. The mark of the beast crisis all comes down to obedience. Who we obey is who we serve. So whose servant are you? If you belong to the Creator of the heavens and the earth, then obey his Sabbath on the 7th day of the week. And if you keep the Sabbath on the 1st day of the week, then you show by your obedience to the Roman Church that you believe they really do have the divine authority they claim to have changed God's law. And when the decision is enforced by law, if you obey the words of men above the word of God, you will receive the mark of allegiance to the Antichrist power, the mark of the beast. The push for legislating Sunday began as far back as the 4th century with the decree of Constantine, who issued a decree saying, "On the venerable day of the sun, let the magistrates and the people residing in cities rest, and let all workshops be closed." Not long after Constantine sanctioned Sunday as a day of rest, the Catholic Church in 364 AD recapitulated the same, saying Christians must not Judaize by resting on the Sabbath, but must work on that day, rather honoring the Lord's Day, if they can, resting then as Christians. But if any shall be found to be Judaizers, let them be anathema from Christ. It's worth noting that not only will there be a law making Sunday a mandatory day of rest, but there will eventually be a law making the true 7th-day Sabbath a day of work, just like Pharaoh did in Egypt when he forced the Hebrews to make bricks without straw. The decree was intentionally designed to double their workload, forcing them to labor on the Sabbath. In Exodus chapter 5 and verse 5, Pharaoh addresses Moses, and Pharaoh said, "Behold, the people of the land now are many, and ye make them rest from their burdens." The word for rest there means to keep the Sabbath, and in response to their Sabbath keeping, Pharaoh responded, And Pharaoh commanded the same day the taskmasters of the people and their officers, saying, Ye shall no more give the people straw to make brick, as heretofore. Let them go and gather straw for themselves. And when Pharaoh had made a decree forcing God's people to violate the Sabbath, then the plagues fell upon Egypt. At the end of time, meaning in the near future, we will see the same process. After Sunday laws are enforced through legislation, eventually there will be laws demanding everyone to work on the seventh-day Sabbath. At that time it may be said, It is time for thee, Lord, to work, for they have made void thy law. When the laws of man make void the law of God, Satan will cross a line and God will intervene, sending the 7 last plagues. Sunday laws are not foreign to modern America. In the United States, blue laws are laws enforcing Sunday rest. These laws were held in high regard in colonial America. In Virginia in 1610, the law stated, Every man and woman shall repair in the morning to the divine service and sermons preached upon the Sabbath, meaning Sunday, and in the afternoon to divine service, and catechizing upon pain for the first fault to lose their provision and the allowance for the whole week following. For the second, to lose the said allowance and also be whipped, and for the third, to suffer death. The death penalty for violating the Sunday law also existed in Massachusetts and Connecticut, while New York, Pennsylvania, and Maryland had lesser penalties in place, like forfeiting 200 pounds of tobacco, being whipped up to 39 lashes, or being kept in the stocks for up to 3 hours. In more recent times, the march towards Sunday legislation has been rapidly progressing and steadily increasing. Pope John Paul II said in the papal bull Dies Domini, or the Day of the Lord, that Christians will naturally strive to ensure that civil legislation respects their duty to keep Sunday holy. Pope Benedict in 2005 continued to champion the enforcement of Sunday by law, saying, Society risked being enslaved to work and must recover the traditional day of rest. He continued, saying, Catholic values were not negotiable, and they must feel particularly bound to introduce and support laws based on these values. The Catechism of the Catholic Church itself states that in respecting religious liberty and the common good of all, Christians should seek recognition of Sundays and the Church's holy days as legal holidays. And this is where coronavirus comes in. Because as the world continues to sound the battle cries against climate change and against pandemics and viruses like the coronavirus, the enforcement of a day of rest will gradually become the solution that the public will demand. Why? Because pandemics will and already are being seen as a result of climate change.
In 2021, the world will start looking to life beyond the pandemic.
Future of the Earth's climate.
Climate change is caused by us. So in other words, it's up to us to make a turnaround.
Today, our focus is on climate change over the
highest temperature ever recorded north.
Remember, the Pope already began inserting this idea into the public mind when he said coronavirus could be nature's response to climate change. And others are saying the coronavirus outbreak is part of the climate change crisis. Still, other articles have touched on the relationship between the virus and climate change. NBC published this article saying coronavirus shutdowns have unintended benefits: cleaner air, clearer water. CNN wrote, satellite images show less pollution over the US as coronavirus shuts down public places. In China, it's the same story, why China's air has been cleaner during the coronavirus outbreak. Venice's canal water looks clearer as coronavirus keeps visitors away. And coronavirus lockdowns continue to suppress European pollution. The streets of major cities have been dramatically emptied of traffic. Denver, Paris, Nashville, Las Vegas, and thousands of other cities are emptied. This is why it is being said global response to COVID-19 should be a model for action on climate. With lockdowns so strongly impacting the climate in a positive way, and knowing where prophecy tells us we are heading, to a global enforcement of a day of rest, it should be no surprise to see mandatory Sunday rest being promoted as the policy that will maintain these positive changes. On March 24th, coronavirus is punishment from God, Pennsylvania lawmaker suggests. calls for statewide Day of Atonement. On April 20th, the Christian Post wrote, "Is the pandemic God's judgment? America has 10 reasons to think so." And in this article, each of the 10 reasons are related to the breaking of each of God's 10 commandments. And therefore, in reason number 4, he states, we know no Sabbath in our 24/7 economy. He explains that we give no Sabbath. We break Sabbath by withholding relief from the burdened. So already, this pandemic, he's arguing, is a judgment of God as a result of breaking the Sabbath commandment. Perhaps well-meaning, but themselves deceived, many Christians will point to calamities on land and sea, to the storms of wind, the floods, the earthquakes, the destruction by fire, as judgments indicating God's displeasure because Sunday is not sacredly observed. These calamities will increase more and more. One disaster will follow closely upon the heels of another, and those who make void the law of God will point to the few who are keeping the Sabbath of the 4th commandment as the ones who are bringing wrath upon the world. This falsehood is Satan's device that he may ensnare the unwary. Pandemics, earthquakes, tsunamis, fires, and floods of the most awful proportions will follow one after another, and the sentiment will be advocated that were those keeping the Sabbath compelled to obey the law for Sunday observance, there would be a cessation of these terrible judgments. And with the passing of the Sunday law, the mark of the beast crisis will begin. On April 19th, author Michael Brown wrote an article published on ChristianPost.com entitled "The Shutdown, the Sabbath, and a Weekly Divine Reset." And reflecting upon the busyness of his life and his frequent travel, he comments, "But what happens when the shutdown ends? What happens when, if God wills, I start traveling again? The key is a weekly reset, a mini shutdown of sorts, a Sabbath rest, which in his mind means Sunday." Fox 5 News of New York posted during the pandemic saying, "Should all stores close on Sunday to allow staff a day off to recuperate?" The local supermarket chains in New Orleans think so, as Bromart is taking a day off on Sunday. And Mayor Cam Guthrie in Ontario, Canada, took to Twitter to say, "Just putting this out there for considering. Once we kick COVID-19's butt, I suggest that everything be closed on Sundays again so that we can appreciate the importance of what taking a pause in our busy lives really means. I think our body, mind, and soul would thank us." Puerto Rico is leading the way by connecting the idea of lockdowns with Sunday legislation. The Associated Press reports Puerto Rico to lock down Sundays. The governor, Wanda Vasquez, told the press, "We have to pause to save the lives of our old people mainly." On June 17th, Crisis Magazine made a call to bring back the blue laws, in which they state there was a time when even the United States Supreme Court favored these ordinances. Justice Stephen Johnson, field writing in Hennington v. Georgia, 1896. The prohibition of secular business on Sunday is advocated on the ground that by it the general welfare is advanced, labor protected, and the moral and physical well-being of society promoted. When considering the potential for Sunday legislation, we have to remember it will not be necessarily only on the grounds of religion, but the entire world can get behind the idea of a day of rest if it is for the general welfare and health of the people and the planet. The author concludes, America, for the sake of its own emotional and spiritual welfare, for the sake of its own sanity, needs to restore the blue laws. In September of 2020, ABC News reported that the Pope made a call to use the pandemic to give the environment a vital rest. The Vatican said the COVID-19 pandemic has shown how the Earth can recover if we allow it to rest, and must spur people to adopt simpler lifestyles to help a planet groaning under the constant demand for economic growth, Pope Francis said Tuesday. The concept of curbing climate change is also heartily embraced by most Christians. Climate Sunday launches across Britain and Ireland. and this Climate Sunday initiative is a collection of over 700 churches that see the importance of coming together to combat climate change. Another organization called Green Sabbath Project says on their website, "Is there nothing you can do about the environment? Nothing may be one of the best things you can do. One day every week, do nothing." The idea is simple. If Sunday rest is the solution for a global problem, then the entire world will need to rest on Sunday.
We are facing an urgent crisis, one which threatens our very existence. The climate catastrophe.
The ecological crisis is essentially a spiritual problem.
And responded to the Minister of Health, who was asked that we do not have commercial activity in supermarkets, hardware stores, or any stores on Sundays for now.
Grocery stores will be closed every Sunday for the whole month of April to give employees a chance to rest. And everyone says that's how it should be.
In tough battle against the virus. That's why we're announcing today that businesses will now be closed on Sundays.
Quebec Premier François Legault said closing businesses on Sundays will give frontline workers a break.
Spend it with the family, which is the family values like we used to have back in the old days, back in the 60s.
Shoppers agree that Sunday is a day for everyone to rest.
So-called blue laws, named for the color paper they used to be written on, have been on the books in New Jersey since the late 1600s.
I actually enjoy the blue laws.
I think in this consumer-driven world, we can all use a break.
Sundays is the day of the Lord.
It will be an opportunity for our workers to get some rest. Quebecers must remain united to win the battle against the virus. Everybody must follow our plan.
It will be business from Monday to Saturday, but there will be no commerce in the supermarkets on Sunday.
The big theme for September the 6th, which has been dubbed Climate Sunday.
We're well into the 6th mass extinction event.
With the COVID-19 pandemic, many people are suffering from poverty and loneliness. This is why we need fraternity more than ever. We need to care for each other, for we are all members of one human family. This is why at COMECE we are committed to promote Sunday as a common weekly day of rest in the European Union. A day that gives time for family and spiritual life.
Let them have Sunday as the day of rest while we fight this out, and let us give Sunday as the time to be able to move forward.
In view of the rising cases of COVID-19, the Madhya Pradesh government has imposed lockdown on Sunday in Bhopal. Restaurants and hotels will now function till 10 p.m. in the state. Shops in containment zone in the city will remain closed.
As nations turn to Sunday observance to curb the pandemic, the same solution is being heralded to solve climate change. CNN reported April 8th, the world is coming together to fight coronavirus. It can do the same for the climate crisis. While the coronavirus pandemic and climate change are inherently different issues, they share two important characteristics. Both are global crises that threaten the lives of millions of people. The Antichrist power needs control over the earth, which means a global form of control. And the best way to get the nations of the world to go along with a global government is to bring about a global crisis. Climate change and global pandemics are both global crises, which are meant to legitimize a global solution, which in this case is global government. On March 15th of 2021, LifeSite News reported Pope calls for New World Order, says wasting COVID crisis would be worse than pandemic. The Pope said, let us all keep in mind that there is something worse than this crisis, the drama of wasting it. And what productive change is the Pope hoping will come out of the COVID crisis? He said in relation to his new book, God and the World to Come, that we can heal injustice by building a new world order based on solidarity. The prophecies in the book of Revelation clearly state that the enforcement of the mark of the beast will be a global initiative. In chapter 13 and verse 3, we read, all the world wondered after the beast. And in verse 8, we see all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him. And we read concerning a second beast power, that he causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast. In the world today, the nations of earth are sovereign, in that they answer to no one, or at least that's how things used to work. Today it's not that straightforward due to the establishment of international governing bodies, like the United Nations or the Council on Foreign Relations, that drive and direct international policies, or the International Monetary Fund that seeks international solidarity in the economy, or the World Health Organization that helps to set policies and recommendations for health and is seeking to establish universal health coverage. And even in the religious world, there is the World Council of Churches that works for the unity of Christian denominations. In the last 75 years, the world has drastically changed as the leaders of nations seek a global cohesion of governments.
Nothing less than a new world order. This is the pledge of the world's most powerful leaders.
A new world order.
A new world order.
That we needed a new world order.
When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order.
Author of a new book, it's called World Order.
Globalization is real. It's unavoidable.
A new world order for the 21st century.
Francis asking people to come together tonight as the world faces the coronavirus pandemic.
The Bible foretold 2,000 years ago that this would be the case, and we can see the rapid fulfillment of these prophecies in the headlines of today. On July 26th, we read UN Chief Guterres calls for one supreme body of global governance. The reasoning being, the world needs an overarching level of multilateral governance that can sideline problematic national interests, which is simply another way of saying global governance should supersede national sovereignty. When financial institutions merge with the international agencies, like the UN, it would surely make controlling buying and selling much easier. Henry Kissinger, a well-known globalist, was quick to say back in April of 2020, the solution to coronavirus is the New World Order, arguing that no country, not even the US, can in a purely national effort overcome the virus, Kissinger warned. Addressing the necessities of the moment must ultimately be coupled with a global collaborative vision and program. The pandemic caused by the virus with a 99% survival rate is being heralded as a global problem, which is just the fuel he wants to promote a global solution, global government. Global governance does not necessarily require countries to surrender their sovereignty to a single international organization. All it requires is cooperation to a common objective or ideal that will seem to be in everyone's best interest.
What is our mandate? I believe it's this. In the battle to save our planet by getting climate under control.
Global warming, for example, is one such ideal. A global health crisis is another means by which the nations may think it best to work together, or a global economic crisis, or perhaps all of the above. Whatever the crisis, the most restrictive laws and tyrannical plots ever conducted against planet Earth will be said to be for the good of the people. So, who will be at the head of such a movement? The Bible reveals this too. So far, we have identified the beast that rises up out of the sea in Revelation chapter 13 as the papacy of the Roman Catholic Church. However, the Roman Catholic Church is not the only power in this prophecy. John speaks of another beast. He wrote, "And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and spake as a dragon." And the role of this second beast is then stated, "And he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed." This second beast, when it comes on the scene, is to cause the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, which is the Roman Catholic Church. The word cause means to force or compel. So the second beast will force the inhabitants of earth to worship the Roman Catholic Church. And since obedience itself is a form of worship, the phrase "to worship the first beast" tells us the second beast or nation, whoever it is, will use its power to force all the inhabitants of earth to obey the decrees of the Roman Catholic Church. But the prophecy gives us more light on how this will happen. Just as it causeth the earth to worship the first beast, we read in verse 16, "He causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads." The word causeth links these two verses together, showing us the way the second beast causes the earth to worship the first beast is by forcing the world to receive its mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. So this second beast will force the inhabitants of earth to worship the Roman Catholic Church by a law enforcing the observance of Sunday, the sign of the Church's authority, the mark of the beast. Only a nation with a lot of power and influence would be able to accomplish such a thing. So let's now identify the second beast that will cause the world to worship or obey the papacy of the Roman Catholic Church. And part of the key to identifying the second beast's power is looking at where these beasts came from. Remember that regarding the first beast, John wrote how he saw a beast rise up out of the sea. Therefore, the woman John saw sitting on the beast he described in chapter 17 as the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. Then John defines the symbol of the sea and the waters for us, saying, the waters which thou sawest where the whore sitteth are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. So the prophecy is telling us that the Antichrist power representing the Roman Catholic Church system would arise in a populated area with lots of people. And that it did, as it rose to power in Rome, which was the heart of the then known world. So what about the second beast that rises from the earth? If the sea or multitude of water represents a populated area, then the earth or land would represent a desolate or largely uninhabited area. In other words, the second beast, like the first, is a nation or kingdom. But rather than coming to power in a populated area or by conquest, this nation rises up in a remote area by itself. Now, with regard to the first beast, we already saw of this first beast representing the Roman Catholic Church that it would reign for 42 months. We read, power was given unto him to continue 42 months. And since the Bible defines a day in prophecy to be equivalent to 1 literal year in Numbers 14:34 and Ezekiel 4:6, saying, I've appointed thee each day for a year, then this 42-month period that began in 538 AD with the Pope's assumption of the civil power of Rome would last 1,260 years, ending in 1798, when Napoleon's general took the Pope captive. And with this, the power that was given to the first beast was ended. But John then wrote, And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. If the power of the first beast ended in 1798, and another beast is now coming upon the scene, we should expect it to rise to power in a remote area about the same time, around 1798. In the notes from his own Bible, John Wesley wrote in 1754 about this second beast, he has not yet come, though he cannot be far off, for he is to appear at the end of the 42 months of the first beast. This second beast is described in the prophecy as having 2 horns like a lamb. Throughout the Bible, and especially the book of Revelation, the lamb is to denote the meekness, gentleness, and purity of the character of Christ. Peter wrote of the precious blood of Christ as of a lamb without blemish and without spot. The second beast, when it rises to power, is a lamb-like or Christ-like beast. But the prophecy also warns that eventually, at some point, it will speak like a dragon. Who is the second beast or nation that appears with Christian principles and rises to power in a remote and uninhabited area? In a book titled The New World Compared with the Old, the author wrote on page 462, Since America was discovered, she has been a subject of revolutionary thought in Europe. The mystery of her coming forth from vacancy, the marvel of her wealth in gold and silver, the spectacle of her captives led through European capitals, filled the minds of men with unrest. The second beast that rose to power in a remote area around 1798 is, without a doubt, the United States of America, that signed its Declaration of Independence on July 4th, 1776, and has become the most powerful and influential nation and civil authority on the earth to this day, next to the Roman Catholic Church, which is considered to be the world's most authoritative moral authority on earth. The United States of America and the Roman Catholic Church have enjoyed a very cozy relationship in the last 100 years, and according to the 2,000-year-old Bible prophecies, these will be the two of the leading powers in the enforcement of the mark of the beast upon the world.
Certainly no one can speak with greater force to our own generation than you yourself.
But all Americans are grateful to the Catholics of this country for the standards they have set.
You said famously, when you looked into Vladimir Putin's eyes, you saw his soul. Yeah. When you look into Benedict XVI's eyes, what do you see? God.
Holy Father, we thank you and welcome you with joy and gratitude to the United States of America.
My administration will stand side by side with the American Catholics to promote the values we all share as Christians and Americans.
We'll look at the encyclical on climate change. It's all about, we have responsibilities.
Mr. Speaker, the Pope of the Holy See.
Now, we have so far identified the two beasts in the 13th chapter of Revelation that will be involved in the Mark of the Beast crisis. We have identified the first beast as the Roman Catholic Church system, and the second beast as the United States of America. The Roman Catholic Church will use its moral authority and influence to promote a counterfeit Sabbath day of worship, the Mark of the Beast. And the United States of America will use its civil power and influence to force all upon the earth to adhere to this law honoring Sunday, and in this way will fulfill the prophecy, causing the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast by receiving its mark. But now we need to consider the third and final major power in this prophecy that will bring about the mark of the beast, and that is what John called the image of the beast. An image of something is a replication of it, like an image in a mirror. The image you see of yourself in the mirror is not you, but it is a representation of you. And the same is true of the image of the beast. It is a similar representation or a replica of the beast. In this case, the two most significant characteristics of the beast power is that it is both a church and state power, and that it uses the civil power of its government to enforce its religious mandates. This could not be more clearly demonstrated than by the more than 100 million victims tortured and killed by the Papal Church for more than 1,000 years, if they would not surrender their conscience to the doctrines of the Pope. But now, in the modern era, the second beast is seen by John, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast. That is, a church and state power in the new world, similar to that which shed the blood of Christians for a millennia in the old world. Even now, the Christian influence in the policies and practices of the United States government is rapidly increasing, with the President surrounding himself with a multitude of Christian leaders and counselors to guide him in the affairs of the state.
We thank you for this nation that was born in 1776. We pray in 2020 it would be born again.
And I declare, God, that you use them to change the spiritual atmosphere of this nation.
And just as the religious priests, the Sadducees, and the Pharisees cried unto the government leaders, like Herod and Pilate, for the crucifixion of Jesus, so now will the Christian leaders and pastors and priests come to the point where they will ally themselves with the government and persuade the leaders of the state to enforce their doctrines and policies of the church.
I do not speak for my church on public matters, and the church does not speak for me.
6 decades later, Biden put Pope Francis's picture in campaign videos and the Oval Office.
I grew up with Catholic social doctrine, which taught me that faith without works is dead.
You see the impact of Catholic social doctrine on his policies.
In order for the United States to form an image of the beast, the religious power must so control the civil government that the authority of the state will also be employed by the church to accomplish her own ends.
Evangelicals have steadily gained visibility and influence over the past 50 years, not just from the pulpit or TV, but at the voting booth. This group can sway entire elections.
If already nearly half of Americans believe the Bible should influence U.S. laws, it will be very, very easy to convince Americans to change or eliminate constitutional rights, such as the Establishment Clause, and even enforce religious tenets upon the entire nation when they believe it to be in the nation's best interest.
It's the soul that is corrupt, and how we get back to a moral rebirth in this country, I don't know. Probably we should be debating a bill requiring every American to attend a church of their choice on Sunday to see if we can get back to having a moral rebirth.
But this state of affairs will not come about without the help of supernatural events. The prophecy concerning the United States as the second beast says, "And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast." Miracles will be wrought with the intention of deceiving those that dwell on the earth, making them believe that they, the people, should form an image to the beast. And among these miracles, demons will appear among men in private and in public, pretending to be departed loved ones or influential figures of the past, pleading with man to depart from his wicked ways and restore the sacredness of Sunday worship.
Diana. When the ghost actually appears, it turns out to be the ghost of Princess Diana.
The miracle-working power manifested through spiritualism will exert its influence against those who choose to obey God rather than men.
Every religious tradition, every wisdom tradition talks about these beings that come to get us when it's time to die.
She speaks with dead people, and now she says we too can communicate with lost loved ones. In her new book, There's More to Life Than This, she's teaching us how.
"Oh, when did you get here?" And I said, "I'm Dave from Hospice of the Western Reserve. I've been here for a while." And she looked at me and she said, "Not you, George." And I turned around and looked, and there was nobody behind me.
George was the patient's long-deceased husband.
He says, "And I want you, Mom, to know that I live life through your eyes. So I want you to be happy. So know every time you smile, my soul is smiling in heaven."
The danger is that these demons will not be readily identified as demonic spirits. Almost everyone on earth has some form of belief in life after death, and that when a person dies, they do not really die, but continue to live somewhere else.
I see dead people.
In the plainest language, the Bible teaches, "The soul that sinneth, it shall die." Nevertheless, ministers today repeat the teaching of the serpent when they declare, "Ye shall not surely die, but live on forever in another state." They point to Jesus' words on the cross, "I say unto thee today, shalt thou be with me in paradise," as proof that upon death, the individual would be in paradise. But they disregard entirely statements to the contrary, such as Jesus' words to Mary after his resurrection, "Touch me not, for I am not yet ascended to my Father," showing that even 3 days after he died, that he had not yet ascended to his Father in heaven. Instead, the Bible teaches from cover to cover that the dead know not anything, and that there is no work, nor device, nor knowledge, nor wisdom in the grave whither thou goest. Jesus himself likened death to an unconscious sleep when he spoke to the disciples about Lazarus who had died, saying, "Our friend Lazarus sleepeth." The manifestations of demons pretending to be departed loved ones the Bible calls familiar spirits, and says they are the spirits of devils working miracles, which go forth to the kings of the earth and of the whole world to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty. And this is the purpose of these demonic spirits appearing as famous figures of the past, as the disciples of Christ, or as departed loved ones. It is to ensnare the world into receiving the mark of the beast, and to disregard entirely the "Thus saith the Lord" of the 10 Commandments, declaring the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. I am taking the time to share this information with you because these miracles wrought by demonic spirits will be overwhelming. And unless your faith is firmly planted on a "Thus saith the Lord," you will be deceived. And I dare say that if you now believe that Sunday is the true Sabbath, and that at death a person does not rest in their grave, but lives on in some other conscious state, you are already deceived. And if already deceived, would you not readily receive the mark of the beast if it were enforced today? Communications from the spirits will declare that God has sent them to convince the rejectors of Sunday of their error, affirming that the laws of the land should be obeyed as the law of God. They will lament the great wickedness in the world and second the testimony of religious teachers that the degraded state of morals is caused by the desecration of Sunday. Great will be the indignation excited against all who refuse to accept their testimony. And in this way, the Protestant Christians in America will so control the state government that the military and civil powers of the most powerful nation on earth will be employed by the Protestants to enforce the papal day of rest. In this video, Unmasking the Mark, we have covered a lot of ground. We have identified the first beast in Revelation chapter 13 as the Roman Catholic Church, the world's most regarded moral authority that has presumed to have changed the Sabbath commandment of God's law from the seventh day of the week to the first. We have identified the second beast as the United States of America that will use its civil power and influence to enforce the Roman Catholic Church's day of rest on the first day of the week, bringing all the inhabitants of earth to make a final decision whom they will worship and obey just before the wrath of God is poured out upon the earth in the 7 last plagues. And we have identified the image of the beast as the apostate Protestant Christianity that will use the power of the state to urge legislation enforcing all to honor the Sunday, the mark of the beast. The Savior who gave his life for us is the same one who gave these prophecies concerning the mark of the beast. And it is his desire that we recognize and obey the commandment he gave to rest on the day he sanctified and blessed as a sign of our allegiance to him, instead of the decree enforcing the counterfeit Sabbath of the Papal Church that would be a sign of our allegiance to the beast that would think to change times and laws. In part 2 of Unmasking the Mark, we will take a much closer look at why the issue of the Sabbath will be the final test for mankind and the principles that are involved in making such a choice, such as what the Sabbath tells us about the God we worship, about the plan of salvation, the righteousness of Christ, and how the coronavirus pandemic is being used to prepare the world to embrace a Catholic social doctrine that will be the driving force in deceiving the world and even most Christians into receiving the mark of the beast. But we will also take a look at the heaven-sent health principles from the Bible that have the power to liberate us from the fear-driven mindset created by the pandemic. God has warned us that at this time, at the end of all things, the devil deceiveth the whole world. And therefore, the instruction of Jesus was never so momentous as today when he said, "And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free."